finally one day, I was about 8 or 9, and he threw me a fastball, and I just launched this ball way over the house, and that was the beginning of it all, really, for me, in terms of knowing that, like, all right, bro, like, I got you.
you know?
Yeah.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode here on Youth Inc., presented as always by Audiorama and our friends at Invisalign. Back by popular demand. She is quite popular. She's been a great addition here on Youth Inc., making a little more in front of the camera as opposed to making magic behind it, is our producer, Tasha. Tosh, thanks for joining us again. Last week's episode was very, very well received with your addition.
Oh, thanks for having me back. It's been fun.
Happy to have you.
Yeah.
So what's going on?
Just watching NBA playoffs, casual, like every other probably person. And I don't know, did you watch game 1?
I saw the highlights. You talking about the Celtics game, the Celtics versus the Nets?
I'm talking about Celtics, yes. Did you
That
watch
was
that
wild.
game?
I mean, our boy Kyrie lost his mind.
No, yes, he really did. And that's one of the reasons I'm bringing that up is because I'm sure, as most people who are listening saw, Kyrie was getting heckled by fans, and he said he wanted to give them, the same energy in return. He threw some fingers. He mocked back a little bit at him. But in his post-game press conference, he just said, there's only so much you can take as a competitor, right? It's happening more and more to him. We see this on professional levels, but it's also happening more and more on youth sports levels too. And my question for you, Greg, is, how did you handle this as a player when you were getting heckled by fans? And did you stay calm? Did you respond back to them? How did you handle that?
Yeah, it's hard. Actually, I've actually 2 funny stories. One, as a player, we were up in Seattle last year, and not last year, but we were up in Seattle years back, 2015. And for anybody who's played there, or just anybody who follows the NFL, their home crowd is as loud and as spirited and as into it as any crowd. It's a really, really special environment. It's a really, really cool NFL experience. It almost feels more like college. And right outside the visitors' tunnel, they have this group of fans. It's really spearheaded by this one guy, and it is relentless. From the time you walk out in pregame, like when you come out in your t-shirt and shorts to just throw the ball around and, test out the field. And then when you come back out for regular pregame, then you're in the tunnel, going in and out for halftime. It's relentless, and it's personal. It's cursing. It's really, really aggressive. And I'll never forget, we had tough luck up there. They had beaten us, the first couple times. And in 2015, we won on like a walk-off 40-yard touchdown that I caught from Cam. And I'll never forget, I saw, you could tell our players had heard it both that day and in the past. And coming off the field, they found this guy in the bleachers. Man, we were absolutely ripping his ass. We were screaming at him, cussing at him. He had given us the business for years, and we hadn't been able to beat him. So we kind of walked out of the tunnel with him yelling at us. And we finally got that one shot. And much to Kyrie's point after the game, you can only take so much. And we waited till after the game, but man, we gave it to him pretty good. But that's the one moment that I remember as a player where it felt good after the game. Like you just needed to get that off your chest, because for the most part, 99.9% of the time, you grin and bear it. It's part of the game. It's kind of part of the experience of being on the road. A lot of guys embrace it and kind of use it to fuel them, and it brings a lot of fun energy, and you just kind of laugh. But that one time, man, it felt good to go back at them.
When you're playing, do you usually, you could tune out the noise, or are those remarks, some of them just stick out more than others?
Yeah, I think for the most part, you tune it out. If you're in an opposing stadium, you're going to hear all sorts of stuff. The difference for us than the NBA guys have, even the Major League Baseball or, those sports, they're just so much closer to the players.
Yeah.
Our sidelines are pretty big. Everyone's behind a wall. You look at an NBA game, when the players are inbounding the ball or checking in at the scores table, there's people sitting next to the bench in courtside seats, even the people that are sitting behind the press, the press row at the scores table. Those people are just a few feet. You could reach out and touch the players. It's a lot more intimate. I'm sure it's a lot easier to hear what's being said, respond back. It's just, I think the NBA leads to a little bit more of an intimate fan environment that leads to maybe a little more back and forth with the players during the game. More than not so much in the NFL world where everyone's kind of back far off the sidelines. They're you're coming in and out of the tunnels when you hear most of it. But when there's 75,000 people screaming, you don't typically hear the one voice during the game like you would maybe in the other sports.
But when you're coaching your kids now as a coach, how do you tell? Like, do you tell them to respond when they're getting heckled at? Do you tell them to tune it out? Is there a time to respond? Not to respond?
We don't respond, and I have a couple rules. I'm all about the parents of my team and the other team being spirited, cheering, being into the game. I don't, if the other team wants to, we've played some teams where the fans and the parents in the stands have like cheers and they're banging their feet on the aluminum bleachers and they have like choreograph. Like I get all that, right? Some teams thrive on that energy. Some teams really want to create that chaotic feeling. And I respect that. I get it. I think sometimes it's an advantage for you if the opposing team is used to calm and they're used to everything being very relaxed, and you can create a very stressful environment. Sometimes you can give your kid an advantage. I remember this past fall, Tate was playing in this Perfect Game, which is like a youth baseball organization, and they had these all-state things. So they get, multiple teams from the coastal area. Tate's playing on it. We go down and we're playing in a championship game against Team California. So the best 10-year-old players from California are playing our team, and Tate's pitching. It's the championship game, and it's neck and neck, and their parents were into it. It was a tense game. It was back and forth. I think the score was like 3-3, and we were in like the fifth inning. Maybe it was 4-4, whatever it was, and they have these pitch counts. So their fans started to really get going, and they weren't yelling at Tate, but they were trying to create like a very chaotic experience. And, you're a 10-year-old kid, and you're standing on the mound, and the pressure's on, and then the atmosphere of the people watching it starts to grow. And something we always talk about, I'm like, hey, you got to learn to operate in those settings now. Because as you get older, those moments just continue to grow, and you're going to have people screaming at you. You're going to have people when you go to an opposing gym when you're in high school, they're going to call you out and single you out. The more you can, right? So like the whole idea is like, get used to it now. Well, these fans, as the game goes on, they start turning it up. Their coach challenges that Tate has pitched too many pitches. You're only allowed to throw 75 pitches, and we were charting it, whatever. And he had thrown 74 pitches. So I wasn't even really one of the coaches, but it's your kid on the mound, right? So I walked down behind the backstop, and I'm like, no, he's at 74 pitches. And their fans are like, no, he's got to come out. You got to change pitchers. And I remember I looked at him. I was like, you guys worry about your team, and we'll coach our kids, right? I kind of snapped back at him. So he starts the next
tell him.
I just, you get caught up in the thing. And I was like, no, you guys cheer, you guys scream, you guys do your thing. We'll coach our kids, you coach yours. That's like my one thing I hate about youth sports is like, you coach your kids, you cheer for your kids, don't talk to my kids, and don't correct my kids, don't yell at, I don't mean my kid literally. I mean my kids I'm coaching. I hate when opposing fans or opposing player or coaches interact with my kids. I don't like it. So long story short, he starts the next batter, and he's battling. And what do you think happens on the last pitch?
Does he strike him out?
I wish. Kid hit a home run.
Are you serious?
So the kid hits a home run.
Are you serious?
I swear to God. So he hits a home run.
Oh,
so Tate pitched, what was it? 5 innings. He hit his max. He left the game. We were down like 4-3. So, he battled hard. He did a great job. And what really pissed me off is their fans. So now we had fought hard to keep him in the game. And then the kid hit a home run. Shit happens. Their fans start ragging him. Yeah, one more pitch. They start ragging him. So I walk over there. And again, some moments we're not proud of. Some moments as parents. But similar to Kyrie.
Is this a proud moment? Is this a non-proud moment?
It's a moment I don't regret.
All right, what
we'll leave it at that. I wouldn't say I'm proud of it. But I walked over there. And, very quietly, I didn't yell across the field. The game had continued. We made a pitching change, and the coaches, kept going. I walked behind the dugout, and I walked up to the group of parents. I said, hey, listen, you guys can cheer. You guys can yell. I don't care if you storm the field. The kid hit a home run. You can cheer all you want. You're not going to single out a kid, and you're not going to single out my kid. I said, you guys you're picking the wrong battle to face here, bud. And you're like, oh, we're not, at the kid. I said, you were. So we addressed it, the guy who ran the thing, and I walked away, and I just had to go up there quietly and be like, listen, he's 10. You want to cheer, you want to go for it. You're not going to hurt any of our feelings. But the kid just battled his ass off, and now he's walking to center field because we're making a pitching change. You're not going to single out and yell at a 10-year-old kid. So that's where I kind of draw the line. So along the lines of Kyrie, where it's like, sometimes you can only take so much. I get it. But 99.9% of my time, my philosophy as a youth coach and as a youth parent is I don't interact with the other parents until after the game. You say good job or whatever. And I don't ever interfere with the other team. I don't tell the other coach what to do. I don't tell the other players what to do. I don't interact with the other parents. Like after the game, we shake hands. Good job, coach. Good job, parents. Well, sometimes if it's local, we'll take a picture with some of the other kids, in the snack stand, whatever. But like during the game, everyone just coach their kids. Everyone cheer for their kids. Don't cheer against anyone else. And I tell my families on my team the same thing. Like, we're not going to cheer if a kid gets benched. We're not going to cheer if a kid gives up a home run. We're not going to mock kids. We're not going to yell and attack kids. We're going to cheer for our kids. We're not going to cheer against the other kids. So that's kind of our rule. But that story from the fall sticks out.
When Tate was pitching, did he hear them heckle at him, or was he just?
Oh, no, he heard it. Yeah, he knew. And my message to him driving home was like, get used to it. You know what I mean? Like, if they were banging you all over the yard and you had given up 10 runs, then they probably wouldn't have mocked you. They would have probably pitied you, right? They would have felt bad for you. But you were in there battling, and maybe they weren't used to that. Maybe they were used to having a little easier. And that's going to be the way it goes. People are going to always attack. And a lot of the times they do it to make themselves feel better. So like, don't play into it. You got to block it out. You need to focus on what you need to do, focus on what your team needs you to do, and get used to it now, because it just gets harder the older you get. There's going to be gym fulls of people one day hoping you miss every shot. There's going to be stands of people hoping you walk every kid. There's going to be, it doesn't matter who it is. As you get older, things get harder. And it's good lessons to learn now how to operate in stressful environments. And those are really good life lessons to me that we can get through sport. And I think operating when things are tough and things are on the line is a really good quality for kids to learn. On today's show, we have the pleasure of being joined by Denver Bronco quarterback Russell Wilson. And as always, thank you so much to our presenting sponsor, Invisalign. Invisalign is the #1 doctor-trusted brand, having transformed over 12 million smiles for over 25 years. Invisalign gives you the opportunity to make a trusted decision that can help you continue to build the confidence for your child. You can find your trusted provider at Invisalign.com or talk to your doctor. So now, please enjoy this conversation with one of the greatest quarterbacks in NFL history, 9-time Pro Bowler, 2 Super Bowl appearances. He won Super Bowl 48 over the Denver Broncos as a member of the Seattle Seahawks, former teammate of mine, Denver Broncos quarterback, and my good friend, Russell Wilson. I hope you enjoy it. All right, everybody, welcome back to a really special episode, a special edition episode of Youth Inc. Today, we are just honored to be joined by our next guest. One of the greatest quarterbacks in NFL history, 9-time Pro Bowler, Super Bowl champion, former teammate of mine, albeit for one weird, crazy season that we'll probably touch about in a little bit, and just an all-around great guy, a good buddy of mine, Russell Wilson. So, dude, thank you so much for joining us here on You Think. This is a treat.
Man, it's an honor to be on here with you, Greg. Obviously, I've always admired you, your game, obviously being teammates together, like you said. But also, too, I'm excited because you hit me up. And I normally say no to all this stuff, but when you hit me up, I said, what are we talking about? You go, we're going to talk about the youth. We're going to talk about life. We're going to talk about all things. Yeah, so I was excited because I've been seeing just the roar you've been on, the firestorm of all the good stuff you've been on, and just how you're building so much, which I honestly truly admire, just because of obviously how you played the game, but how you've done everything off the field too. So from community to charity to obviously being in the booth on Sundays nowadays, you've been kicking butt on that. So to be on the podcast, this is a treat for me. I'm excited.
Well, I appreciate it, man. And you were awesome. I wish we could have played together longer. Our 2020 season of COVID, it was a wild, crazy year. It wasn't exactly the year any of us kind of envisioned when we set out there in February. We met at the Super Bowl and kind of had these big dreams of having a special season. And we ended up playing in front of nobody and no family, no fans. We couldn't go out. It was a wild year. But the story that I always tell, and when people ask me, I obviously every time I go on a show or anything, especially in the last couple of weeks, obviously we're going to touch on real quick here. It's been a crazy few weeks for you. I saw behind the curtain a little bit out in Seattle. And of course, I don't know who's been living under a rock, but of course, the big story in the NFL the last couple of weeks, you've been traded to Denver. But I just want to give you a chance to just speak a little bit about your time in Seattle. I mean, I saw it first, up in firsthand, just how much that city meant to you, how much it meant, you going to the children's hospitals, engaging with the kids in the community at sporting events and on the youth scene. Just what did that city mean to you for really what was your first chapter of what's going to be a Hall of Fame career?
Well, first of all, it meant everything to me. To be in Seattle, I got drafted on April 27, 2012. My dreams, became true. I played on some amazing teams with some amazing people, amazing players, coaching staff, all that kind of stuff. And then the fans, they traveled, the best fans in the world, traveling all over the world, doing whatever, wearing the blue and green and everything else. But what meant more than anything else to me was just the community, to be able to go to Children's Hospital. I remember going, on May 11th, 2012, and just going there. And it was just a big moment, in the sense that they had no idea who I was in the Children's Hospital. They kind of laughed at me like, "Who are you again?" I was third round pick, fifth overall, and I got to see 5 or 6 kids that day. And then, I asked the lady, "Hey, can I come back every Tuesday?" And so, I think that, I've been able to see over 1,000 plus kids at the Children's Hospital, probably. And to see miracles happen, to see kids overcome obstacles and battles, and to know that that's what life's really about. To know that, to be able to overcome and see kids just continue to believe, and see parents come together in the midst of a storm and everything else. Those are the moments I cherish the most. Obviously winning games, I was fortunate to win more games than anybody in 10 years, but I think what was the biggest win of them all was just knowing that you could impact people. You could impact people in an amazing manner, and in a really cool way, was being surrounded around some amazing people too. So, there's a lot of, confusion around everything, this and that. But what I do know is that I loved every moment I was in Seattle, and, and I forever cherish my moments there. And, I think that what I do know is that, obviously I love playing there. It was everything that, meant the world to me, and I always dreamed I was going to play forever there. And I think that what happens is in sports, as better than anybody else, things change, things happen and all that kind of stuff. And you just take one day at a time and know that, what, God's giving me an amazing opportunity to do what I love. For me, I want to be somewhere for a long period of time, not just a short period of time, moving forward here. And so that's always kind of been my thought process. And so, the tide shifts a little bit, I think as you go throughout your career. And, I think that's been really important to me, to make sure that, this year, the years coming up, the next 2 years, the next 3 years, the next 5 years, the next 10 years of my career, that, you're in a place that you're going to give it your all every single day, and vice versa. And so the one thing I know about Seattle, I gave it my all every day. And the one thing I know about that is every day I woke up, I tried to give everything I could. And so, and I'll forever do that. And I'm just forever grateful. But what's more important than anything else other than the games, it's just the people, the people that you be able to bond with, and think back, and just to know that there's been some amazing memories. So, listen, what I do know about life is the one constant in life is there's always change. And I think that what I do know is that in the process of change is that you remember all the amazing memories, and you have to look forward to the next moments. And I think that, for me, it's just being in the moment right now, being in the moment of, being able to go to Denver, Children's Hospital, and make an impact there, to be able to help the youth there, to think about what we've been able to do with our Why Not You Foundation, and to be able to help kids, and then also to be able to win games too as well. Obviously, that's what God's given me an amazing gift to play football and spin the rock around. But I think that if I could reflect on anything in Seattle, and if I could think about whatever I would see in Denver, it would be around the youth, and to be able to impact those two areas, and in Seattle and Denver, and around the country. And so I'm just grateful, man. I have a grateful heart for every moment, every second, every minute of it all. The 12s, the best fans, and then obviously to be able to have some amazing memories and hold that trophy up and do some great things along the way. It's all you cherish it all, and so I'm excited about what's ahead though, and knowing that we got a great football team in Denver too, and I'm excited about that and the battle and the challenges ahead of us, and knowing that I really believe that's going to be a great thing in Denver as well, with some amazing players, amazing coaching staff. Coach Hackett's amazing, and the GM there, Coach George, he's great too. He has a great vision. They have a vision of what they want to do and how they want to do it, and so I'm excited about it, and the players are excited about it too.
Yeah, I saw you had a bunch of guys down to your house. I remember coming out there in 2020, working out with you and DK down at the field. So before we move off of this, so for 10 years, Chapter 1, you're in Seattle, Super Bowl champ, nine out of 10 years, you're in the Pro Bowl, household name, all that. All right, so now Chapter 2 starts. You mentioned Coach Hackett. So what was that emotion? What were the mixed emotions when you get that call? Who calls you? How do you find out, all right, hey, it's done. All this speculation, all this rumor, it's happening. You're going to Denver and you're kind of starting Chapter number 2. And you're moving into a new part of your career. Like, what is that conversation? Who calls you? What is your mixed emotions saying, all right, I got to put this 10 years. It was amazing, but it's now behind me. I got to move forward with a new group and start learning new guys in a new city and start building, the next stage of my career.
Well, I still had to fly to Denver to see, go there and see everything and everything else. And I think their focus on what the plan was for this year and the years coming ahead, in terms of what they wanted to do and how they wanted to do, was very clear. And I think that was really important to me. And just knowing that, as you know, Greg, you can only play this game for so long. And so you want to maximize every moment, every second, every play. And I think that was what was really important. If there was going to be a change, okay, well, if it's got to this point, well, I need to know that there's going to be a plan. And they had a great plan in their thought process and how they thought about it. And so I think for me, knowing that there was going to be a change, it was one of those things at that moment that, okay, I got to hit the reset button here and just cherish all the amazing times I've had in Seattle. And knowing that also too, it's sports. I mean, every great player from Tom Brady to Brett Favre to so many other greats to baseball players. You think about the great baseball players or basketball players and everything else. It's, you pray and hope that everything lasts forever. And that was my hope and goal. But if it doesn't, okay, now it's, I still got days left to play. I got to go get every single moment, every single day, make it the best of it. And so what I'm grateful for is life. I'm grateful for the ability to play the game, just to be able to do what you love. And you can't take that for granted.
All right. So, but before the Super Bowls and before all the Pro Bowls and obviously the 10-year career you've had, and I've heard you say you're not even halfway done. You hope to play 10 plus more. You were just a small kid playing youth sports and multiple sports. And, before you were a minor league baseball player, before you were a dual sport star in college at NC State, you were just a kid. And the whole purpose of You Think right now, this show, is to just have these conversations with folks like yourselves, parents, athletes, specialists. We talked to your boy, Dr. Michael Gervais. He was off the charts. He had me reconsidering everything in my life. But, the part is going back to where it all started. So take us back to, where did Russell Wilson's athletic career start? What was it like? How many sports were you playing? Was your family pushing it? Was this just something you always gravitated towards? Like this, we've all seen your career over the last decade plus. But we want to see the part we didn't see. I want to hear more about where this whole journey started that allowed you to kind of accomplish the things that you have up until this point.
It started ground balls at 5:30 in the morning, playing shortstop, throwing to first base with my brother. It started with BP practice, chasing down my brother's home runs and stuff. And it started with late nights in the backyard. We put these construction lights, these orange construction lights up, and we'd be hitting in the backyard, and my brother would play one-on-one baseball against each other for 9 innings and with a tennis ball, and just hitting the ball all over the place. And we had our house on the left, and if it hit the ball over the house, it was a grand slam, and so my brother would just crush it over the house. I had to he'd go chase it, I had to go chase it and go get it and bring it back. And finally one day, I was about 8 or 9, and he threw me a fastball, and I just launched this ball way over the house, and that was the beginning of it all, really, for me, in terms of knowing that, all right, bro, I got you,
Yeah.
So I mean, man, I just think that a lot of it was playing little league baseball. We played 3-a-days. We played triple headers. in Virginia, like all the time, just constantly in the hot 100-degree weather. You play basketball, you'd do all this stuff, and you battle. You play AAU basketball, you play the YMCA, you go all this different stuff that we do. I played soccer. When I was a young kid, one of the first sports I ever played when I was about 4, I was playing soccer. I played t-ball when I was 4 years old. So for me, I go back to the one memory, though, I really clearly go back to is playing in the backyard at my grandfather's house in Norfolk State. He was the president of Norfolk State for 22 years, and he had this awesome backyard, this cool fence. And I remember I was 4 years old, and my dad was pitching to me, and my grandfather too. And my grandfather was a big lefty, and he threw me a fastball, and I hit the ball out of the park, and I run around the bases, and I hold the bat. So I go back to those days, man, when I was young. I was with Future today. And, he was pitching today and got to, after practice, I always spend time with him where I work on the little things that we could work on a day. So I was working on getting that knee kick and then running the bases. And so we did that for 30 minutes afterwards just to give him that sweat. He's like, Dad, come on, man, come on. I'm like, well, you want to have the fun, and later in life you got to do this kind of work early. So anyways, it was cool. But all those memories have impacted me as a father and to be able to be a coach and dad too at the same time, and also obviously be a player right now.
It's the best. I mean, coaching your kids and being part of it. My son had my 9-year-old had 2 baseball games today, and it was a range of emotions of exhaustion, thrills, frustration. It's all wrapped in one. I find it really interesting when I ask you to give our viewers a sense of your youth baseball, man. I know this from sitting on you on the planes. We had some awesome conversations going to and coming home from games that year. And baseball was always, and trust me, football, I've told stories about you and your prep and whatnot, but like baseball is special to you, no? I mean, it just seems like you're growing up, and we're going to talk about your time in the minor leagues and playing in, dual sport in college. But like for you to pick a baseball story, I think is super telling about just how much of a love you had for the game at a young age.
Yeah, no, I love playing baseball, man. It was my favorite sport. Everybody would probably say that was my best sport growing up. It was my sport that I was just naturally really good at. I played shortstop, pitched. But it was the thing I loved doing, man. Just how could you not? The smell of the grass. Even nowadays, when I go out to Little League field or go to a big league game, you get to see the perfectly cut grass, the infield, the dirt. I mean, it's just there's a certain feeling to it.
It's the best.
So yeah, baseball I think has helped me play the game of quarterback too, though. You think about all the side throws, sidearm throws, the movement, just the being able to see peripherally. I think all that stuff really helps.
Totally. So now where does football enter this mix? You're telling stories about, you and your family, your father, your grandfather, your brother, and you guys are playing in the backyard and you're growing up playing Little League. And so like, where does your football journey, like at what age is it saying, all right, Russ, I know you're really good at baseball, but let's not ignore this quarterback thing. We got a pretty good shot here. I mean, is it not until you get into high school? Is it middle school? Like, where does the football journey start?
Well, 2 stories. I think, my dad played for the San Diego Chargers for a little bit, got cut, played with Dan Fouts and Kellen Winslow Sr., and he had this ball he caught against a touchdown against the 49ers, and it was painted. And we used to throw it all the time. I mean, my brother and I would just throw it around the house and dive and catch it. And one day I ended up breaking something. I kind of slowed down. So that was kind of my first days of just throwing the ball around all the time.
And how old are you here?
I'm 4 or 5.
Yeah, you're a kid. You're a baby. Yeah.
Yeah, I was young. But fast forward though, my first time really playing. I mean, we used to play outside in Virginia. You'd play it, and you get all 4 seasons. So you'd play in the snow. You'd play in the good summer times. You'd always be out playing outside. And I was a video game guy, but I loved playing outside. So we used to play tackle football, 2-hand touch, all that stuff. Recess and after school and all that. But the first time I really got to play was actually I was end of 6th grade, going into 7th grade, and I hadn't played tackle football yet. And in terms of helmets and shoulder pads and all that. And so I'd been playing AAU baseball. Baseball, like I said, it was like my biggest sport at the time. And I begged my mom to let me play football. She was like, she was cool with me playing football, but she didn't really want me to have a helmet and shoulder pads on yet. And so anyways, my dad was kind of like, let's just wait a little bit. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, so I'm playing AAU baseball. We're playing down in North Carolina or somewhere. And at the time, my assistant head baseball coach at the time his son played on this league called Tuckahoe Tomahawks. And it was a little league football team, Tuckahoe Tomahawks. Okay, so anyways, Tuckahoe Tomahawks, we had this football, and we also always throw after the baseball games. In between the doubleheaders, we'd throw football, and everybody's like, oh man, like I launch this ball, right? And so anyways, Schmitty was his name. He ended up coming up to me. He was like, hey, listen, man, like you talk to my dad. He talked to my dad and me. He's like, you got to come out and try out for the Tuckahoe Tomahawks. Well, fast forward, that I begged my dad. They let me go. It was a Friday night. I go to practice. And I get to practice a little bit late because I was coming from something baseball, I think, or something else. I get there late and it's under the lights, and they had these little Wilson TD footballs or whatever. And I launched this ball 55, 60 yards. And I'm young, right? So I launched this ball. I mean, right? And everybody's like, what in the world? So anyways, the next day, it's a game day, and we're about to play Highland Springs. And Highland Springs is like the best high school team, or the best, it's the best high school team at the time. But they also had the best Little League team. They were like number one and everything else. So fast forward, we played them, and it was the first play of the game, and I didn't play. I was on the bench, and it was the next day after that, Friday night. So Saturday morning, boom, first play of the game, bam, quarterback gets hit, busts his spleen. Like, true story, busts his spleen. He's on the ground. It was like, oh no, like what is going on? Okay, I'm entering into the game. Russ, you're in. Boom, I draw the plays in the dirt. I think we win like 60-7, something crazy. I end up drawing the plays in the dirt, and that was my first football game.
So you got like 24 hour. You got like 24-hour notice.
Not even. I lit it up. I lit it up though. It was the coolest experience, and that's when my love for football really took over. And I just was playing all the time. But I used to always play with my brother and all that kind of stuff too.
That's awesome. So a question we get from a lot of our viewers and a lot of the families that we speak to is, how does my kid balance loving multiple different sports? And especially in today's world, even different than how we grew up, where, you could play seasonal sports back then and not really feel like you're missing anything. But in the culture we're growing up in now, in this climate, everything is so specialized, the sports, the positions, where there's this sense of, if I don't have my kid committed to to a sport at a young age, basketball, baseball, whatever it is, I can't keep up with all the other kids who are getting those reps year round. If I take the fall off to play football, when I rejoin my baseball team in the spring, I'm falling behind because those kids aren't playing football. So, like, what do you say to those families? How did you do it first? And then what is your philosophy on that? Like, how do you encourage kids to continue to play multiple sports and not fear that you're going to fall behind when that next season comes, when none of your other peers, or not all of your peers, are on a similar schedule?
Well, my belief is this: if you're a parent and you're limiting your kids just to playing one sport, I think you're wrong for that, because I think that the thing about playing multiple sports is a few things. Number one, I said your hand-eye coordination as a boy or a girl, you learn so much more the more you do. So if I'm playing soccer, now I'm using my feet, my hand and my feet, my eyes and my feet, right? If I'm playing goalie, whatever it may be. If I'm playing baseball, right, just to be able to move, side shuffle from side to side, to be able to catch a fly ball is one of the most talented things in the world to do, to be able to track a ball. Hence, fast forward, great receivers, great tight ends, their ability to catch a ball, a lot of times because they were able to play these sports when they were younger, and they'd be able to turn their head and be able to find the ball, and to be able to still keep their equilibrium intact in a way when they're running and looking up in the air and getting pushed around. And to be able to play basketball, to be able to be in shape and go up and down the court, and to jump and to catch and to shoot, like that ability. But more importantly, okay, that's the first part. That's the talent part. That's the skilled part. But socially, I think the ability to be able to be in all these different games, and to be able to have high emotions, and to be able to be at a low state. And then, baseball will take your soul away. Going batting 300, I always tell futures, like going 3 for 10, like you're a Hall of Famer. It's like that, going 3 for 10
at the youth level, it's a struggle at the youth level. God,
it is. And then, it's like, so it can take your energy away. And so to be able to play these different sports, and to know that there's going to be highs and lows, to be able to get overcome, to be able to come back in a game. Like, one of my favorite things in sports is to be able to come back. But how did I learn how to do that? Well, I learned how to do it when you're down by 5, and it's the 9th inning or the 7th inning in a baseball game, and just continue to flip your hats and do the rally hats. It's like those moments like that you can't get anywhere else. And so I think it's important that our kids get outside. And I think nowadays what happens as well is that, listen, our kids spend more time on this phone than anything else. and then not to mention their computers or the video games. So I think it's so critical to get outside and play multiple sports. And listen, if you're a world-class tennis player and you're number 5 in the world or number 1 in the world, that's different. But most of us aren't.
Yeah. So, all right. So now we're going to fast forward. You're in high school. You're a dual sport star. You eventually go on to play at North Carolina State, but you do get drafted in the Major League Baseball draft. You get drafted out of high school, and I've read quotes, and I remember talking to you about it. You know, you had been to Manning Passing Academy. You were a Division I football recruit, but here you are. You get drafted in baseball, and you have a decision on your hands. You know, they were offering you significant money. You know, one of the highest paid guys as far as that round pick coming out of high school that they've had. And I've talked to you about it, and I've read some articles where you're quoting, you're saying, like, I had a really big decision. So what was that decision? You know, how did you end up deciding that you were going to continue on, go to college, continue to play dual sports, and you weren't going to take that professional baseball route? By your own words, was your first true love?
Yeah, well, I got offered. I was, really good in baseball at high school. I got calls in the late first, beginning of the second round. I got offered $1.2 million before the draft. I told my dad and I told, the other teams that, hey, listen, I want 1.5 or I'm not going to go, just because of taxes and all that stuff. And I had this amazing opportunity to play football and baseball at NC State.
Right.
So I didn't need to rush to do this. And obviously football meant a lot to me too. So I wanted to make sure it was right. If I was going to go to college, though, my whole thing and all the colleges knew that if I was going to go to college, I'm going to play 2 sports. I'm not just going to go to college just to play football or just to play baseball, because I had this amazing opportunity in baseball. Why would I just leave to go play one? So anyways, I got offered 1.1, 1.2, turned it down. Still got drafted late in the rounds, and they still offered me. Orioles offered me 1.1 or whatever it was, and just kind of, just already decided, hey, I'm going to go to college. Well, the thing was, my dad said to me, well, as soon as I did that, he said, I need you to graduate in 3 years. I'm like, graduate in 3 years? How am I going to do that? He's like, we're going to take 18 credits every semester and you're going to graduate early. And I'm like, you got to promise me you're going to graduate in 3 years, just so once you're done with school, if you do get drafted, you don't ever have to go back. If and you went on a full scholarship. So I said, okay, I promised him. Shook hands with him. He said, shook hands with me. Shook hands with him. And I go to college. As soon as I get there, my dad gets sick. And I kind of just spun my world all the way upside down. And it was challenging, when you see somebody that, was one of the most active people, one of the most brilliant people, go through what he had to go through. He had to get his leg amputated. He suffered a stroke, several strokes, suffered a stroke, then went into a coma, was in a coma for 3.5 weeks. They told him he wouldn't live any longer. By God's grace and a miracle, by my mom praying over him. And she sang this song, All by Grace, to him in his left ear. And the doctors, he kind of moved, and the doctors, she went to go get the doctors. The doctors didn't believe her. She said, no, just watch. She started singing the song All by Grace to him again. He moves his right hand. He moves his left hand. She says, move your right foot, move your left foot. He wakes up right there. Now, remember, he'd been in a coma for 3.5 weeks, hadn't moved. And that's when I really started believing in miracles, and whatever God had for me, I was going to just trust in that and just know that it was going to be good. And sure enough, I obviously played football and baseball at NC State. And just to be able to be in close proximity to my dad, I'd drive up to Richmond, Virginia from Raleigh, North Carolina. People wouldn't know it, but I'd sneak up and go see my dad and come right back. And those moments I cherished, those times I cherished because it was just really special. It was really special, even though he lost his life. As soon as I got drafted June 8th, 2010. The next day, June 9th, 2010, my dad passed away. I got drafted by Colorado Rockies. And I think that's, that's part of the reason why, the Rockies have been important to me, and Denver just as a whole, because how they treated me, how they treated my family. And so it's just kind of how amazing how things work and how the world just kind of comes all together, how much, Seattle meant to me, to be able to know I could impact that city and all that. But also too, to know that, this is where, my professional life also began too, in baseball, but just how that organization, helped me in so many ways, because I was at a low. I was at a pretty big low in those days, for a little bit. And what I found was that the sun still comes up in the morning. And so, man, like I said, baseball means a lot to me, man. It taught me a lot. It taught me about adversity. It taught me about challenges. It taught me how to have amnesia, you have to be able to have amnesia when a one pitch goes by you, or you miss a ground ball, or you just hit a home run, or whatever's good going on in life. Sometimes you got to be able to just focus on the next pitch. And that's what it really taught me in life.
Yeah, I just really appreciate your willingness to kind of share that personal side. I think it's so important sometimes for our viewers and fans and everyone that obviously knows you from afar to just really get some insight into what motivates you and what moves you. I've heard you've shared that story with me, in a personal setting, kind of one-on-one, but to hear you share that with our audience and everyone and just give them an insight into, your soul and an insight into your motivations and your why and just everything that shaped you to be the person that they all see on Sundays and they see, in the press conferences and whatnot. I just think it's so important because for so often we forget that behind all these athletes there's a humanity, right? There's a human element to this. They have emotions, they have ups and they have downs. And a lot of those ups and downs are what shape us to be who we are. So I just think it's such a relevant part of the story, your connection with your father and your love and that connection of sport and and that love that you two shared and your connection to baseball and football and how it kind of shaped your path. I always find that all that stuff works out for a reason. It's not a mystery why now all of a sudden you're back in Colorado and Denver. Like it all comes full circle. And I think that story is just such an important part of the story to kind of weave all of it together.
Yeah, also, Greg, what I find is that early on in my career, I think I was more just so quiet because I'm a third round pick, second, fifth pick, trying to make it, on the team, and
Yeah.
what I found is as I was able to impact more people and to be able to, go to more rooms and hospital rooms and to be able to tell, my story and, part of my story about just life and how, it hasn't always been, cherries and, on top,
Yeah.
it's been some stuff that you battle through, you go through just like anybody else. And I think we all struggle with different things or whatever it may be. But what I do find is that through speaking about life, to speaking to share your testimony with people, obviously, I'm a spiritual guy, but to be able to share my testimony, to be able to share the things I've gone through, my hope and my prayer is that it impacts and influences somebody else to share theirs, but also to be able to keep going. If my dad could say one thing, he'd say, "Son, just keep going. Just keep going."
Just keep
And
going.
so
I think that's super powerful stuff, man. I think everyone has that moment that they can think back to. I can think of about 10 off the top of my head where you have no choice but to just wake up and keep going.
Yeah.
You have no choice. Well, the last part of that chapter before eventually you go on and you get drafted, and of course your first 10 years of your NFL career, everyone's kind of watched play out the Super Bowls and whatnot we've touched. But the final really interesting chapter of this whole journey before your NFL career was you kind of reached a tipping point there at NC State. Is you were really motivated to continue pursuing football and baseball. You had some conversations with the coach at the time. And there was some disconnect about whether the school really wanted you to continue to pursue both. And you made the decision you were able to leave early. You had one more year left of eligibility, and you ended up finishing your career at Wisconsin and went on to play in Rose Bowls and then eventually become, a draft pick, obviously, in Seattle. But what was that time like? How you were so committed to being a dual sport player in college that you were willing to change schools over it. I find that really impressive that you really believed in yourself and really believed that was what was in your best interest, that you stuck to your guns and made what you thought at the time was the best decision for you.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was, I had graduated early in 3 years.
Yep.
I played at NC State, loved it all. It was an amazing experience. Like I said earlier, I mean, God putting me there was just by his grace to be able to put me there, to be able to go there. And I never forget, I walked off the field. We just beat West Virginia, and we had walked off the field, and I go back from the bowl game and Champ Sports Bowl in Orlando. And I get back to the hotel, all excited, all fired up, and just excited about, being able to play both sports and, everything else. And my whole plan was to come back to NC State and do all that. And I never forget, my agent, Mark, he was my advisor at the time. He comes up to me and says, "They want you, Coach O'Brien thinks that you need to just go play baseball. Your time's up here." And I'm like, "Huh?" And this is an hour after the thing, and I need to talk to you about it because there's one rule that I found. And I said, "Well, what is it?" And he said, "Well, because you graduated, you can actually transfer to go to any school you want to in the country because you graduated." And I'm like, "Well, I don't really want to leave, but tell me more. He's basically said that, they were ready to move on. They had Mike Glennon as a quarterback at the time, or behind me, backing up. And that was their plan. They wanted to be able to go with Mike. And that was a tough thing to do. And, I just asked for the opportunity to compete. Hey, just give me the opportunity to compete. And he said, no, this is what we're going to do. And so I said, okay. I said, so then I, still in my back of my mind, I still thought I was going to be able to go back there. I said, there's just no way. So I went to go play, spring training ball and all that, baseball. Did that. Was in Nashville, North Carolina at the time playing. And I'll never forget, I was in Rome, Georgia on the third floor of the Holiday Inn. And I called Coach O'Brien. I said to him, I said, hey, it's April 27th, ironically, which is an important date. Once again, that's the day I got drafted a year later. It's April 27th, and I call him and I say, hey, I want to come back to play football and baseball. I want to come back to NC State and finish my senior year up there. And he said, no, like I said, we're going a different direction. And that was when it was time, like, okay, like I asked, like, can I just compete for the starting job? He said, no. And it was kind of a crazy situation. So, but the thing is that I was okay knowing that, if this is what God wants, I'll be whatever you want, God, I'll do. And so fast forward, I just prayed about it, asked for my transfer papers, and then I was hitting BP at 4:00. I was in the 4:00 group, the first hitting group. I go back to my locker at 4:15. We're playing in Rome, Georgia against the Atlanta Braves organization. I go back to my locker, and next thing I know, my phone was buzzing, and it was Auburn Tigers. It was Gene Chizik calling me, and I missed the call. I call him back. He goes, hey, this is Gene Chizik from Auburn Tigers. We want you to come to Auburn. And that was the first call. Second call, another SEC school, and several other calls that night. Big Ten, Pac-12. I was getting all these calls within 24 hours, and my life just flipped up, upside down, but in a positive way. Whatever, and so the hardest part was making the decision: do I still play baseball or just play football? So I just kept playing baseball, stayed focused on that, but I ended up taking 2 visits, Auburn, Wisconsin, and I liked both schools. Both were amazing. But when I got to Wisconsin, I knew it was for me. And the reason why I knew it was for me was because they love football, number one. Number two, obviously both schools do in Auburn and Wisconsin. But number two was that they had this big pro line. There was the third biggest line in football. They had our left tackle, Ricky Wagner. Our left guard was Travis Frederick. Our center was Peter Kahns. Our right guard was Kevin Zeitler. Our right tackle was this guy named Oglesby. And then we also had Havenstein as the backup right tackle. So, and for me, being 5'11", it was like, you know what? People can't say anything. If I go ball here, and people can't say anything, if I get to play behind this line and do great. And that's what I did. And it obviously worked out for me. It was the best experience. I got to work with Barry Alvarez and get to be around him. I got to work with, obviously, Brett Bielema and Coach Paul Christ, and just some amazing players, and Nick Toon, Abaderis, the guys I already mentioned, the linemen, and Monty Ball and Melvin Gordon, James White. I mean, it was an amazing.
You guys were loaded. You guys were loaded.
It was an amazing 6 months, and some of the best 6 months of my life. But what it teaches you, I think, more than anything else, and now obviously you see all these kids transferring now because we kind of opened up that rule, and I think that's a good rule. The reason why I think it's a good rule is because we go to college, to play big time sports, but we also go to college to get our education. So what it's doing is it's allowing, but also in a way forcing kids to get their education earlier, which I think is a good thing because now kids are getting educated, and so I think it's important. And so, anyways, though, for me though, what was really cool about it was I had to take that risk. I had to take that risk. And if I didn't take that risk, I wouldn't be where I am today. And so, sometimes in life you go through stuff and you realize that, you want to be in a place that you're wanted. You want to be in a place that you can do everything you've ever dreamed of. And ultimately you want to be in a place that dreams as big as you. And I think that's where Wisconsin was a beautiful place for me. It was a place that, I cherished every moment at NC State. It was really cool. I mean, just to be able to go to that school. So I've been fortunate to be able to go to 2 great schools.
It's just such a cool story. I mean, to see a guy who was the starting quarterback of an ACC program, won a bowl game, just because you wanted to pursue your baseball career in the spring, and it wasn't obviously in line with the way the coaches wanted to move forward. They had another guy that they wanted to go to, and there you end up at Wisconsin and playing a Rose Bowl and end up, obviously going on to your career. I find that just it's a crazy way the world works. But I want to just pivot and transition a little bit. You mentioned when we first jumped on the call that you have a youth sports party going on the door behind you. You have a bunch of kids over, and you mentioned already working with your son Future, and I know you have 2 other little ones. So, all right. So we've heard about your story and you playing with your dad, and I'm sure that has a lasting impact on how involved you are with your kids. But all right, now you're spending time at the ball fields. I see on your Instagram teaching Future how to drop, and you got him out on the grass. So like, which dad are you? Are you the dad that's like all in and my kid's going to do it? I'm going to be involved. I'm going to coach him the right way. Or, are you the dad that's just kind of at the games trying to hide in the corner so no one bothers you? Like, what is your approach now as your kids get older and they start entering youth sports?
Well, what I try to do is I definitely try to coach them one-on-one when we get around each other, but I try to let the other coaches, do their thing as much as I can, but it makes me like itch.
It's hard, right?
At the same time, it's like, God, like, like one of my things is like when coaches say like, just swing flat. I'm like, no, don't swing flat. Actually, like not at all. Like swing for the freaking fences. Like get some loft under that thing and hit the ball, or just swing flat. Just no, don't do that. But yeah, I mean, I think that it's especially with flag football. Charlie Martin in Seattle, we have our flag football league, and NFL flag has been amazing. To be the chairman of the NFL flag, it's been really, really cool. And Charlie Martin, he's who he's my president of my company, but also played with you, I think, for a little bit. But whatever. What was really cool is that Charlie got to coach him. So I had a professional football wide receiver coaching our kids. And at the same time, when I'm able to come during the season, I'll stop by on a Saturday or whatever it may be, and I get to coach and help out some and do that part. And when I'm coaching, I'm doing my thing. But I try to not like be overbearing. I try to, but where I try to get the kids more importantly is, especially with Future, is right after the game. I try to get them my dad used to work me out 20 minutes after every game. And that 20 minutes post the games were everything, because I was tired. I had already played. And, you always kind of, as a kid, you kind of look around like, but all these kids are watching me, Dad, focus. Like, I need you to focus on what you're doing, why we're doing it, this and that. And then what it does is it inspires the other kids, but really it motivates your son or your daughter down the road. And they really realize what hard work is. And I think that's important. I think that's really important. So what we have to do, because I'm playing quarterback, I'm so busy all the time, meeting. What I'm fortunate to do, we have this guy named Hutton Moyer, who's Jamie Moyer's son, who played pro baseball and all that. He gets to work with Future. I try to find some players, some guys that have played the game and are able to coach him. Then we have also one of my strength coaches, Decker, who's amazing. He gets to work with Future throughout the week as well. So it's good. We got a good setup.
And does Future love it? Like, do you find your kids, do they love it? Do you feel like you need to push them? Something we've all of our guests bring up, and it just seems like the common thread of all these successful families and athletes is like, if it's kid led and parent supported, that's the formula. Like, do you find Future, like, is he into it? Or are you dragging him out there, or he's full throttle?
He's full throttle, bro. This guy's
That's
an
awesome.
athlete. He's 7 years old and just a premier athlete. He can do it all. So it's fun. He loves flag football and playing NFL flag. He takes it to the house. Every time he touches the ball, it's like, uh-oh, here we go.
Yeah.
He makes spin moves and jukes and steps back and keeps going. He's pretty amazing. He got a good arm too. Baseball, he can swing away. He's won three home run derbies in the past 3 years. So he can swing it. He loves it. He hates losing, like his dad. He hates losing. I can't stand losing, it's like, but it's fun.
I just lost a 9-year-old baseball game in the last inning on a walk-off with a runner on second. Kid hit a base hit. We lost by a run. I'm still not really over it as I'm doing this conversation with you. It's the worst, man. I'll tell you, people think I'm crazy, but God, man, losing sucks. I don't care how old you are.
No, it does. That for sure does.
Something that I kind of find myself struggling with, and mine are a little bit older than yours, but not, they're kind of in that same ballpark. My twins are 9 and my oldest is 10. So we're just not too far ahead of you in this whole process. Like, the thing that I find to be my biggest struggle, and being around you and knowing how you operate and knowing how you tick, I'd be curious your perspective. Like, what made my career and what made me a good player is not always conducive to parenting, like never good enough, always trying to get more, perfectionist, like super intense, always dialed, like, and then when you try to implement that on an 8, 9-year-old kid, like there's some tension there. It doesn't really connect all the time. So like, how do you turn off your approach to your personal career and then your approach to working with your children and the backyard at the ball fields, like, and not bring your super high intense, super perfectionist type mentality and try to implement that on such a young kid? Because for me, it's a huge struggle.
I don't struggle with it because I just do it. I'm like, you know what I mean? Like to me, like, I don't, it should be right every time. Like if listen,
Thank
I
you.
think Future,
Thank
for
you.
example, he's very talented. So I think one of my pet peeves with coaching kids nowadays is that, oh, it's okay to tie. It's okay to this. It's okay to that. Listen, I think it's great for kids to get outside. And if they don't win, cool, great. But if a kid has a talent, a very special gift that's God given, and they have that, right? To me, it's our requirement to coach them and to train them to be the best version of themselves. If they mess up, like coach them, hey, right there, boom, hey, do this, right? Make sure you do this. Now, don't overcoach them, but just give them positive language, give them some thoughts, and give them some clear coaching points. Give them 1, don't give them 5, but just give them that 1 and boom. Like one of the things I really believe with children, and I did this with Future today, is when he pitches, for example, is like put fire through the glove. Like literally give him an image and like throw that fireball like right through his glove, burn a hole in his glove. I don't need to tell him much more than that, because if he's thinking about this and this technique and this and that, and he's a child. I think what's so important though is give them an image of who they are and what they can be. And I just, like for example, Future plays on this basketball team called the Bearcats. And what's really cool about it is their coach, he's a former military guy and all that kind of stuff. But every time they come to the sideline, he has all the kids run over. Come on, run, 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 run. Boom. And he goes, clap it up, clap it up, clap it up, clap it up, clap it up. So everybody claps it up. And every time there's a timeout, it's that every time that energy is just like up here. And I think that he coaches them hard, and I love that. I cannot stand if Future or my kids get a coaching lesson and they're doing something wrong. It's like, okay, next thing, like no, we're gonna fix it right. It's like I have a thing like when we go play golf, and maybe this kills people who listen to this, but like I firmly believe, like whenever I play golf, which I'm not a big golfer, but when I do go play golf, if I'm playing and there's nobody right behind me, but we're just playing, if I didn't make the putt, like I got to finish the putt. I'm sorry, but if you're going to play with me, I got to finish the putt. I'm not a big time golfer, like I said, whatever. But if I'm training myself to think that I'm good and that I'm making that shot, well, if it's a 5-footer, you still got to make it in the PGA Tour. You know what I mean? So like to me, if my son goes and plays golf, I want him to just make the freaking putt before you go to the next hole. Just do that for me. I don't care. Just do that. Like, that's it. Okay, now we can go.
It's a great lesson. I mean, I feel like it could be like the title of a book, right? Make the putt. It's like finish what you start. Finish what you start.
Yeah. So to me, I just firmly believe that we letting our kids just get away with stuff nowadays, and I think we got to coach them harder.
Well, you should move to North Carolina and come play with me. I feel like we'd be on the same page. We'd get along just fine. I don't know if everyone around here agrees with that or not, but that's a conversation for another episode. You brought up imagery, and as we said on our episode 1, I know a good friend of yours, someone you've worked really closely with. He was just absolutely a superstar. Dr. Michael Gervais, world-renowned sports psychologist. I know he's worked with Seattle, and he works personally with you over the years. And it's very funny because I have this quote written down, and you mentioned imagery, and Dr. Gervais said, quote, "One way to accelerate progression of craft is to develop the skill of imagery." So to hear you just bring that up unprovoked, it just shows how much you've kind of embraced this whole idea of mindset and approach, and not only in your parenting style, but in your personal career and your journey and your family. Speak a little bit more about what you mean by mindset and approach, and how can we take those skills, right? People are sitting home listening to this. Well, it's easy for Russell Wilson to say he's a professional athlete, he's older, but like, how can we take that mindset approach, a lot of the things that you were just talking about, and how can we implement that at an appropriate level for our children, for the kids we coach at the youth level?
Well, I think there's two major ways. The first thing is language. What we allow ourselves to say as parents, as coaches, as teachers, whatever it may be, what we say to our kids, to others, what we say to our classmates, our friends, or whatever it is, what we say controls everything. And then ultimately, our children hear that. So now, when I hear a kid at a baseball game, for example, it's like, oh, I just stink. I just can't throw a strike. Well, where's that coming from? Where's that coming from? Most of the time, I can guarantee you, the mom or the dad over here to the right or left, right, who is their parent probably or their friend or guardian, whatever it may be, they're probably in the stands like, come on, just throw a strike. So there's correlation there. To me, our language in our homes controls our language outside of our homes, controls our atmosphere. And so I think that's one thing that I really firmly believe is, once again, just throw a fireball through the glove, throw a fireball through the mitt. It's a positive, forceful image for him to understand. Like, I got it, boom. Okay, so that's imagery to me. Second thing is that I've always believed that in the midst of chaos, in the midst of storms, in the midst of everything you're going through in life, whether if it's your young kid in Seattle Children's Hospital with cancer, you're going through something, to be able to see yourself overcoming, to be able to see yourself healing, to be able to see yourself winning the obstacle, winning the game, winning the moment, winning the interview, winning the key play in the game, whatever it may be. In sports, obviously, if you're up to the plate, if you're playing quarterback, if you're the tight end running the seam route, and there you go, and the ball's coming your way. Well, it didn't just get there, right? You have to picture yourself and practice yourself being there often. And I think the best in the world, I watch Steph Curry shoot, right? It's like you see him shoot these, at the logo shots. He's been dreaming of that stuff forever. And, as he got older, he was able to just keep practicing it. And now it becomes normal. It's like you get to see him go into the side and go to the side of the stands and shoot from the stands and make
It's
it
wild. It's the best.
I mean, come on. I'm like,
It's crazy.
How many times has he practiced that? Well, how many times? Everybody talks about how many times he's practiced it. How many times has he thought about it? And that's where the magic is. That's where the magic is. And I think, we have to be able to take the things. And I think what's blocking our imagery nowadays is, once again, I think this blocks our imagery, and this can help our imagery or it can hurt it. And I think a lot of times we're so seduced by everything else going around us and our children and everything else. It's that they're on this and they're on that, and then they don't see themselves doing it. They may see others, which is a good thing. That's a good part of imagery, seeing others do it so you can see what it looks like. But you have to see yourself do it. If you don't see yourself doing, you'll never do it. And I think that's just a big part of success.
I think that's so. I just think it's so powerful. I think it's so fitting for our journey here on You Think and exactly all the resources that we're trying to provide our the families and our viewers. So, just your insight and your approach and how you apply it not only to your career and to your path, but also now as you're kind of paying it backwards to raising your kids and being the father and the man of your house is just super powerful. Well, I got 3 really quick things, and I'm going to let you go. So they can be short answers. First thing that come to mind. We do this with all of our guests. 3 before you go. What is something in youth sports that you wish was around or you wish that you knew when you were a kid that exists today?
I think, I would say more flag football. When I was a kid, there was tackle and this and that, which is cool. But I think that, I've been fortunate to be able to travel to Brazil, China, to be able to go to Europe and watch these kids play. And what's been amazing, Africa. And what's been amazing, I'll never forget both locations in China and Brazil. I remember that when one particular girl actually said to me, she taps me on my shoulder, and we were in Rio at the time, and she says to me, and we were all this practice field. There's about 100 kids playing flag football at the time, 50, 100 kids or so. And this girl taps me on the shoulder. She goes, we have a problem. I said, what's the problem? She was like, well, like here in Brazil, like we feel like it's too expensive to play football. And I take that and I think about it, and I said, well, why do you think it's too expensive? She said, well, I see shoulder pads, I see thigh pads, I see knee pads, I see helmet, I see cleats. And when we play, soccer or football, we see a ball and a goal, and that's it. Same thing with basketball, ball and a goal. And it made me think about NFL flag and how do we teach kids around the world how to play this? But not just around the world, even in our communities. When I think about the inner city and stuff, and we see these places where it's like they can't afford the ability to have a helmet and shoulder pads and this and that potentially. And the reality is that that's not what we need. We need to teach the skills of football. To be able to play flag football is an amazing skill, and that's why I'm so passionate about it. That's why, being the chairman of NFL Flag, there's an amazing leader with this, and his name's Izell Reese. He's an amazing, amazing guy. He's been, charging along with NFL Flag and the whole NFL Flag team. But to me, NFL Flag is the way to teach the sport globally, to make it a global sport. And it's been really cool to be a part of. And I didn't really have that in Virginia. We just tackled outside.
Yeah, yeah. We didn't play a lot of flag growing up, so I think that's super cool and a great point. The next thing I have for you, talk to some parents out there. There's gonna be thousands and thousands, hopefully, of families that are watching this. Parents raising their kids, saying, "All right, I see Russell Wilson. I love his energy. I love his messaging. I love what he stands for. All right, well, give them one piece of advice that you would give parents, whether it's coming in a similar path behind you. Maybe they have a high school kid who's really athletic and he's starting to get looked at, or whatever the case may be, whether it's a parenting advice or just an approach to youth sports. What's something that you would tell the families and the parents that are watching this?
Well, I think, first of all, always encourage rather than discourage. That's the first thing. I think in the midst of that is being able to control your language. We have a company called Limitless Minds, my brother and I, and we've been fortunate to work with Microsoft and Johnson & Johnson's and Bristol Myers Squibb, some of the biggest companies in the world, but also some of the best athletes in the world. And we really firmly believe in neutral language, meaning speak the truth, right? But also to be able to enlighten with how to fix it. I think a lot of times is that we either give this false positivity up here, or we give this extreme negativity down here. And what we do know is that 100% of the time, negativity works 100% of the time. So to be able to be in that middle category and to be able to speak life into your children and to the people you coach or teach, I think it's so important. But also give them the truth. They deserve to earn the truth. They deserve to earn how to grow and how to learn the right technique and to hear that and to see that. And if we're not doing that, you're not being a very good coach, in my opinion. You're just being a cheerleader. And I think there's a big difference.
I love that. Deserve the truth. I think that's great. Last thing, what do you see the big challenges in youth sports as you now navigate it as a parent, as someone who's kind of in on the, parenting a young child who's just kind of starting this journey? Where do you see the challenges that need to be addressed going forward in the future for youth sports?
Well, I think the biggest challenge is technology. It's how do you balance the love of technology and the need for technology, right? There's this massive need for technology because if our kids don't know how to use technology in 2040, or whatever, in 2022 to 2040, they're going to be struggling to find jobs, right? So, but I think technology has been taking away from the idea of being outside and socializing. And so I think we're losing the social piece of sports and the high and low of that rush, that feeling. And I think that needs to be figured out and balanced out. And I think as parents, we all need to have plans of how to equal that out and to how to make that a little bit more balanced. So we're not just being indoors all the time or not just being outside all the time. So I think that's a real thing. And I think ultimately too, is I just think resources. I think there's a lot of lack of resources to find great coaching. I think there's also a lot of lack of resources to find other things. And so, one of the things that I firmly believe in, have even invested in, is this company called Mojo, and just different things that I do just to think about youth sports. And I think youth sports is, obviously, like I mentioned NFL flag earlier. I think youth sports that's where all the fun is, man, as parents. And even for our kids, to be able to go outside and play ball, like, let's go. And let's just do one favor for me, leagues. Please stop ending games in a tie. Because you'll go out there for 2.5 hours in a game in a tie. So that would be the other thing too, if we could eliminate
ties and time limits, especially in baseball. We go into some of these tournaments, and to play an hour and 20-minute 9-year-old baseball game, you're going to play 3 innings, 4 innings. I mean, I'm with you on that. Ties and time limits drive me up the wall. So I'm with you on that. I actually lied. This is my final question, I promise. When we all tune in, and hopefully I call a bunch of your games. This I didn't get to call any of them last year, so hopefully year 2 now in Denver, I get to call some of your games. That would be a blast. Are we gonna see Denver now just let you be you and just go out and rip it? Coach, give me the ball. First play of the first quarter, I'll give it back to you when the game's over, and I'm going to go out and I'm going to just rip it. Or is Nathaniel Hackett, I'm sure those conversations you mentioned, they've been great. Like, that's what I want to see as just a fan and also as your friend. Like, I want to see you go somewhere where they just hand you the ball and say, go win the game. Like, can we expect that in Denver?
Well, I think what we can expect is a lot of Showtime games, and you'll definitely be calling them. There'll be some good ones in the AFC West. Listen, I think it's, for me, what's the most important thing? It's about winning. Whatever that means to be able to do that. Yep. I think part of that is to be able to do that, right? To go and take over the game and whatever it may be. It's time for that to happen. Game in and game out, and that'll definitely happen in this division for sure. I'm excited just to be around some amazing guys, man. It's not all about me. It's just about the people. And I had some amazing people, and obviously Seattle and teammates, guys like DK and Tyler. I'm going to miss those guys like crazy, man. Those guys meant Bobby Wagner. I mean, he's the greatest player I've probably ever played with, just heart and soul of everything. Jamal Adams, Diggs. So I've been Dwayne Brown. I've gotten to play with some amazing guys. And so I think now the focus is to be able to create new bonds and new connections, and also just go, for 2.0 of my career to be the best version of it. The best version of me, and every day, and just go forward and just continue to love what I do. So hopefully I get to put on a show and go shine for you.
I'll say it for you. I'll make sure when I call your game that I make sure I set let's just let this guy play, man. Just let him go rip it. Because I mean this. I've played with a lot of guys. I played 14 years. I had a lot of teammates, a lot of guys who mean a lot to me. And I know we only overlapped for one. We played against each other, which seemed like 100 times, and only with each other, for that one season. But I can honestly say, and I think it's important for our viewers to know, like, and I'm sure it came through during this conversation, like, you are as impressive, the way you approached, seeing you work on a daily basis. I always knew from afar, but then seeing it up close, really what your day-to-day routine and approach looked like. You can hear it in how you communicate everything you've shared with our audience today, man. It was a short year. It was a crazy year. It wasn't the year I know I personally was looking forward to, but like, being your teammate, becoming your friend, like getting a look at what makes you special and what makes you unique, and you to take the time now to not only share that with me, but to share that with our audience here at You Think, man. It means the world to me, and it means the world to our families. Your voice is as important as there is in sports today, and for you to kind of take your time and resources away to come speak with us today on You Think, man, it means the world to me as your buddy and as your friend and former teammate, everything. So I can't thank you enough, man. This was just an incredible conversation.
Well, man, I appreciate you, man. You've been inspiration to be around such a brilliant mind of the game of football, but also just watching you with your family was really cool. The few times they were out in Seattle.
Yeah.
But just how much your kids meant to you, and what you guys have gone through too, is really amazing inspiration. And like you said, we've had so many battles. I remember you catching that freaking seam route against us in the game. We had so many amazing battles, so many amazing games against each other, but also to be in the same locker room with you was an honor. And man, yeah, I think, you got to have this wild obsession, and, people always ask me that, and I think a lot of people think that, I'm overly busy or this or that, but people don't understand. I'm 24/7. I don't ever stop. You always have to have your priorities right, and be able to balance everything. And I got some amazing people that help me, but also too, I think it's just, I got this wild obsession for the game. And, when you have that wild obsession, you always want to be connected to other people like that. And, it's so true. You're a great example of that. And I've been fortunate to be around a lot of, a handful of guys like you, but there's not a lot of guys like you, man, how you're able to do everything that you're able to do on and off the field. It's an honor. So I'm grateful for you, my friend.
I appreciate it. Well, thank you so much again, man. And this is going to be a treat for our audience. So, and go back to that football party or baseball party, whatever it is. I know you got a bunch of kids outside the door. So go enjoy it. Go see your family. And I look forward to seeing you soon, buddy.
All right, Greg. Man, it's a pleasure being on here with you, man. Appreciate you.
I mean, what a great conversation. I mean, one of the more insightful and interesting and intelligent players that I've ever had the chance to be on the same team with as a teammate or just to compete against, across the field. And I just learned to really respect Russ and really admire his game from afar. And then for one short season to be teammates and then become friends and really get to know him more as a player and as a person. And then to have him join us here today on You Think and just to share his perspective is just such a pleasure. So I hope you guys enjoyed that conversation and took as much out of it as we all did here at You Think. We have some audience questions. And for those questions, we're going to bring back Tasha. Tasha, hello. Welcome back.
Yes.
And
hello.
I know each week our audience questions, we continue to encourage you guys, send questions, topics you want us to explore. And each week, we just continue to get more and more questions and more direction from our followers. So, Tasha, ask away.
Yeah, so one of the first questions we got from an audience listener says, does travel sports, so AAU basketball, travel baseball, do you think, Greg, that helps to hinder the game or grow the game?
I think like anything, as we've found here through our work here at You Think, I think it could be a little bit of both. I think if done right, and if done in the spirit of youth sports and done in the spirit of a lot of the things that we've uncovered here on these You Think the past few episodes, then I think no question it helps grow the game. And the reason I say that, again, just from living it personally through as a father and with my own kids, if we can match the level of competition, the level of commitment, the level, what it takes to play for a particular team or league, if that matches the desire, the skill level, the interest level, the commitment level of the child, if those two things are in alignment, then it's a home run for everybody, right? So if you have a child that really seeks high-level competition and he or she has no problem, practicing multiple times a week in a team environment, maybe going to an extra skilled coach or a skill practice, another sprinkled in here or there throughout the course of weekly prep, and then play long tournaments on the weekend. Oftentimes they're out of town. Oftentimes it's a 2-day sacrifice for the entire family. If you have a child that craves that and you have a child that can handle it and really embrace it and grow with it, then do it. I'm a big believer in putting your child just slightly. If you think back to our first episode with Dr. Gervais, he had the 15% rule. Put your child in something that's 15% further than their current abilities. So I think in that regard, travel sports can be so good, but it's not for everyone. And I think the biggest thing that hopefully our followers understand and have learned through this journey is that's okay. There is a league, there is a team, there is an organization for everybody. And the goal of the parent is to not put the kid on the team or with the coach or with the organization that you think he or she should be with, but where they belong, where they can thrive, and where they can really get the time under task to grow and develop. So I think when done right, it's great. But I also think we have to understand where it's not done right, right? There's a ton of money now being involved in this, where the quote-unquote travel ball or AAU basketball, I mean, those words get thrown around, and oftentimes it's just a local team that once everybody starts paying money, everyone just slaps the AAU or the travel word on top of it. But really, it's just a team that you pay more money to be on. You're not getting better coaching. You're not facing better competition. And at the end of the day, you're not being developed. Development is the core of youth sports. The wins and the losses and the tournaments, all that is fine. But if along the way, your child is not getting developed at the individual skill, mentally, all those components, if they are not getting that development all around as both an athlete and as a kid, you need to find a new team. You need to find a new coach. You need to find a new organization, whatever it is. That's not the place for you. I don't care if your team wins every championship. That's not what's in the best interest long-term for your child, as we've found here and talked a lot about. So to answer your question, Tasha, I think the answer could be both. I think when it's done right, it's incredible. I think the experiences these kids can have access to and the ability to develop relationships and to compete at the highest level and fail and overcome. But then I also think when it's done right, it's at the wrong coach, the wrong organization. It's done for the wrong reasons. It's done for the money or whatever it is. And the kids are not at the core, at the center of the approach. Then I think it definitely hinders not only the game, but I also think it hinders the individual child's ability to grow and develop.
So it's really dependent on each child. You
Absolutely.
for sure. Yeah.
The situation and the child need to match.
Right. Our second audience question is, I think probably from a coach, or how do you handle stressful situations when you're coaching?
I think that's a really good question, and I'll be honest, there's times, and I joke with some of the other families and even with my wife, I say, I'm more stressed coaching and watching the kids than I ever was as a player. And I've talked about that, on this show multiple times. And the reason for that is, as a coach at the youth level, I feel an incredible amount of responsibility for the kids' success. And when they don't have success, my immediate reaction feeling is I've done something to have them come up short, right? I'm failing them in some way by not preparing them to have a better performance or not be in a better position to find success on a regular basis. I need to reevaluate. I'm shortchanging these kids. Like, that's my first reaction as a coach, is that I'm failing them. And that's a lot of responsibility, and it's a big burden. But at the end of the day, like, I feel strongly about that. Like, I believe in every single kid on my teams and the responsibility I have to their parents and to them individually to get them better, to make them grow and make them challenged, to make them accountable and learn hard work and all the different attributes that we've covered here on You Think, as far as what's at the core of what youth sports should be. So during the game, sometimes the stress can be a lot. I mean, don't get me wrong. I pace a lot. I have like a ball that sometimes I like hold and like rub. And I think depending on the situation, the message to the kids is very different. And I'll explain. I have a philosophy that in the games that are the blowouts, in the games that your team is just better, those are the teams where you really, really hunker down and coach your kids hard, right? The score is not going to be an outcome. The wins and losses not really a factor. It'd be very easy to pull the foot off the gas and just say, oh, everything's fine, because the outcome will be what we want. This is not an outcome-based institution, youth sports. Youth sports is a process-based institution where if the end result is what you want, that's great. So in the games where my team is better, or in the games that the team I'm affiliated with or that my kid's playing in, he can just roll out there, he or she can roll out there and just win or find success. In my opinion, if I'm a youth coach, and my advice to you would be, those are the games you got to crack down. Those are the games where you can't take anything for granted. Those are the games where you got to coach and correct the little things, how you leave the dugout, how you cheer for your teammates from the sideline, how you enter the gym, warm-up lines, whatever the sport is. The games that are very stressful, the games that are competitive, the games that are going to be nip and tuck, you're playing another really good team, those are the games where it's encouragement. Those are the games where you try to limit the stress. Don't add to the stress, right? You have your stress, the parents watching, the kids. Those are the games where it's encouragement. We'll fix the mistakes after. It's encourage. It's correct on the fly. It's continue to work. Hey, let's keep playing. We'll worry about it after. So I think the game scenario changes the coaching approach. And I just believe that the more stressful it gets, the more we have to tone it down as coaches and not add. The more the game is relaxed and in hand, it's our job now to crank it up and have the kids always playing at that same level, regardless. We always say it's not who we play, it's how we play. And I think that approach allows that kind of baseline to always remain consistent, and the kids get used to operating in those circumstances.
The second part of that question was, how do you help a young player cope with stress? I think you kind of hit a little bit of it with, if it's a high stress game, give them that encouragement that they need. Don't up the pressure, I guess, for them. Or do you also give them like mechanisms or tools to deal with their stress during a game?
You know what I think is a really good way for kids to get used to being stressed is to operate in those scenarios more often. And often I think the best way to do that is in practice. Like when we run our teams, my last message to the kid every day, and whether, it's baseball season right now, so I use that as an example. The hardest ground ball you should ever field is the one I hit you in practice on Wednesday. The most challenging fly ball that you catch should be in Wednesday's practice. The harder the intensity of the practice, the more intense, the more you're being coached, the more pressure. You need to feel that all week. If I make everything so casual and everything so easy along the week, and we find ourselves in a 6 inning just battle on Saturday or Sunday, and you're not accustomed to working in those environments, of course your stress is going to get the best of you. You're not used to operating in those circumstances. So I think we need kids to get used to being uncomfortable. We can't make every single thing they do easy comfortable, quiet, routine. It's okay. Because now all of a sudden, when the circumstances present themselves differently, because we're playing against a really good team or in a really hard tournament, or there's a million people watching, or the crowd's cheering, or whatever and all of a sudden the external factors elevate, that can't change us. The kids have to be used to always operating the same way, whether it's a calm, whether it's really, really intense. They can't change. Like, we can't let our surroundings alter our approach. The only way to do that is to learn to operate in those scenarios. And I just believe wholeheartedly in that. We don't change how we play based on who we play and the environment in which we play in. We always play the same way. The environment around us can change, but it doesn't ever alter us because we're used to competing. If it's easy, it's easy, but it will never be harder than what our kids are used to operating in. So there's nothing that's going to surprise them, nothing that's going to fluster them. And then if it's anything below that, then it's gravy. Then it's a piece of cake. We got nothing to worry about. So I believe wholeheartedly in trying to always form, like, here's the expectation baseline of how we operate, how we practice, how we play, how we coach, how we do everything. And then no matter where we find ourselves when the competition starts, nothing's going to catch us off guard. Nothing's going to surprise us because we're always competing at that level. We're always trying to go out and play the best of our ability individually and collectively. We don't let who we play or the situation we find ourselves in alter that approach.
That's good. You're setting the temperature when you play the team.
Always.
Right? That's good. Well, that's all the audience questions we had this week. And you could submit more audience questions via Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, at Greg Olsen or at Youth Inc. And yeah.
Appreciate it, Tasha. You are always a welcomed addition here on our A and C blocks here on Youth Inc. And as Tasha said, continue to engage with us. This has been an absolute blast. We love hearing from our fans, our followers every week. We are growing like crazy. And the feedback, I was at a field, Tasha, you're going to like this. I was at a field last weekend with my younger son playing in a tournament. And I had like 3 or 4 different families of different teams walk up to me between games and being like, you don't know us. We've never played you before, but we listen to your podcast and so many of the families on our team love it. And I'm like, that's pretty cool, right? Like,
that's awesome.
Other youth families, other youth teams are starting to kind of catch word of what we're doing and the message that we're trying to share. And I think it's really resonating. So we look forward to seeing everybody next week. Tasha, thank you for joining us. And so please rate, review, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and we'll see you next week.